The story of champagne, a gentle journey through bubbles and time. Welcome. Tonight we're going to take a slow, peaceful journey through the world of champagne. We'll explore how these famous bubbles came to be and how they're made today. You may notice that your screen is dark, and it will remain that way for the duration of our time together. There is no bright lights or moving images to distract you, only the sound of my voice and the story of the vineyard. Adjust your pillows, pull up your blankets, and let your shoulders drop away from your ears. You can safely close your eyes now. Our story starts in a region of northeastern France called Champagne. It's a place of rolling hills and chalky soil, about 90 miles from Paris. The weather there is cool, almost too cool for growing grapes. But this coolness, as we'll see, is part of what makes Champagne special. People have been making wine in this region for nearly 2,000 years. The Romans planted the first vineyards there. But for most of history, the wines from Champagne were still, meaning they had no bubbles at all. They were simply red or white wines competing with wines from other regions. The bubbles, actually, were considered a problem for a very long time. In the 1600s, winemakers in Champagne faced a challenge. The region was so cold that as winter arrived, the fermentation process would stop. Fermentation is when yeast eats the sugar in grape juice and creates alcohol. But when it got too cold, the yeast would go dormant, falling asleep for the winter. Then, when spring came and the cellars warmed up, something interesting would happen. The yeast would wake up again. It would start eating the remaining sugar, creating more alcohol, and creating carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide had nowhere to go. It was trapped inside the bottles. The pressure would build and build. Bottles would explode in the cellars. Sometimes a single exploding bottle would set off a chain reaction, like dominoes falling. Winemakers would lose huge portions of their production. They called their cellars the battlefields because of the constant sound of bottles breaking. This wasn't Champagne as we know it. This was a disaster. There's a famous story about a monk named Dom Perignon. According to legend, he was the first person to make sparkling champagne on purpose. And when he tasted it, he cried out, "Come quickly, I am tasting the stars." It's a beautiful story, but like many beautiful stories, it's not quite true. Dom Perignon was real. He lived from 1638 to 1715, and he worked at a monastery in Champagne. He did make important contributions to winemaking. He pioneered the blending of grapes from different vineyards to create more complex flavors. He advocated for gentle pressing of the grapes. He may have been one of the first to use cork stoppers, which were stronger than the wooden plugs wrapped in oil-soaked cloth that were common at the time. But Dom Perignon actually spent much of his career trying to prevent bubbles, not create them. He wanted to make still wine. The bubbles were still seen as a flaw. It would take many more decades before sparkling wine became intentional, desirable, and refined it to the champagne we know today. Interestingly, the English played a role in champagne's development. In the late 1600s, English glassmakers had developed stronger bottles than were available in France. They were using coal-fired furnaces that could create thicker, more durable glass. English merchants importing wine from Champagne noticed that these stronger bottles could withstand the pressure of the bubbles, and the English had already developed a taste for sparkling wines. They began requesting these bubbly wines from Champagne, and they had the bottles to safely contain them. Meanwhile, they had also been using cork stoppers, which created a better seal than the French methods of the time. Cork comes from cork oak trees, and it compresses when you push it into a bottle, then expands to create a tight seal, perfect for trapping bubbles. So in an interesting twist of history, the English market helped drive the development of intentional sparkling champagne, even though champagne itself could only come from that specific region of France. By the early 1700s, winemakers in Champagne began to embrace the bubbles rather than fight them. They started studying the process. They experimented with adding sugar to trigger that second fermentation intentionally. They learned which grapes worked best. They developed techniques to make the process more reliable and less explosive. One of the key figures in this transformation was a woman named Barbe Nicole Clicquot. She became the head of her late husband's champagne house in 1805, when she was only 27 years old. At a time when women rarely led businesses, she became one of the most innovative and successful champagne producers in history. She invented a technique for removing the dead yeast cells that clouded the champagne after the second fermentation. Her method involved gradually tilting and rotating the bottles so the sediment would collect in the neck, where it could be removed. This process made champagne clear and bright. Before this, champagne had been cloudy. Her champagne house still exists today and still bears her name. Before we continue with how champagne is made, if you're enjoying this relaxing journey through the world of wine, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel. It helps me create more of these calming stories for you. And if you have suggestions for other topics you'd like to drift off to, feel free to leave them in the comments. Now let's continue. Let's walk through how champagne is actually made. We'll take this slowly, step by step. It all begins with grapes. 3 types of grapes can be used to make champagne. 2 are black grapes with dark skins, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. 1 is a white grape, Chardonnay. Even though 2 of these grapes have dark skins, the juice inside is clear. So if you press them gently and quickly, you can make white wine from black grapes. The color in wine comes from the skins, not the juice itself. The grapes are harvested in the fall, usually in September or early October. In Champagne, the harvest is still often done by hand. Workers move through the vineyards with scissors, cutting branches of grapes and placing them carefully in crates. This gentleness matters because broken grapes can start oxidizing, which affects the flavor. The grapes are brought to the winery and pressed. The juice flows out and is collected in large tanks. This juice is called must, though we'll just call it grape juice to keep things simple. Yeast is added to the grape juice. Sometimes it's yeast that naturally lives on the grape skins. Sometimes it's cultivated yeast that winemakers have selected for specific qualities. The yeast begins eating the sugar in the juice, creating alcohol and carbon dioxide gas. The first fermentation begins in tanks, so the carbon dioxide simply bubbles up and escapes into the air. After a few weeks, you have wine. Still wine with no bubbles. Depending on the style being made, the alcohol level is usually around 11%. At this stage, the wine is very acidic and tart. It doesn't taste like champagne yet. It's almost harsh. But this is exactly what the winemaker wants. Here's where the magic happens. Champagne is usually a blend of wines from different grapes, different vineyards, and often different years. The head winemaker, along with a team of tasters, will sample wines from dozens or even hundreds of different barrels or tanks. They're looking to create a blend that achieves the signature style of their champagne house. Some houses aim for elegance and lightness. Others aim for richness and power. Some emphasize fruity flavors. Others emphasize more toasty, bread-like notes. This blending can include wine from the current harvest and also reserves wines from previous years that have been stored specifically for this purpose. This is how champagne houses maintain consistency year after year. The weather changes, the harvests vary, but the blend can compensate for these differences. Once the blend is created, all the different wines are mixed together in a large tank. Now comes the step that creates those famous bubbles. The blended wine is put into thick glass bottles. Before sealing each bottle, the winemaker adds a small amount of sugar and yeast. This mixture is called the liqueur de tirage, but we'll just call it the sugar and yeast mixture. The bottles are sealed, usually with a temporary cap that looks like a bottle cap. Then the bottles are laid on their sides in cool cellars, often underground, where the temperature stays consistently around 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. The yeast starts working again, eating the added sugar. This creates a little more alcohol, bringing the total up to around 12 or 12.5%. More importantly, it creates carbon dioxide. And this time, because the bottle is sealed, the gas has nowhere to go. It dissolves into the wine, creating those tiny bubbles. The second fermentation takes a few weeks, but then the bottles just sit there. They rest in the darkness and coolness of the cellar. By law, they must rest for at least 15 months for regular champagne, and at least 3 years for vintage champagne, which is made entirely from grapes from a single exceptional year. But many champagne houses age their wines much longer, some for 5, 7, even 10 years or more. During this long rest, something remarkable happens. The yeast cells that created the second fermentation eventually die. They settle to the bottom of the bottle as sediment, and slowly, over months and years, these dead yeast cells break down and release flavor compounds into the wine. This is what creates those complex, toasty, bread-like, brioche flavors in champagne. Some people describe it as nutty or biscuit-like. The longer the wine rests on this sediment, called lees, the more developed these flavors become. This is also why vintage champagne, which ages longer, often tastes richer and more complex than non-vintage champagne. The wine is just resting, sleeping in the dark, slowly developing character and depth. There's something peaceful about imagining thousands of bottles lying quietly in ancient chalk cellars beneath the earth, patiently becoming champagne. Eventually, it's time to remove that sediment. The bottles need to be clear and beautiful. The traditional method involves placing the bottle's neck down in wooden racks with holes. Each day, workers go through the cellar, giving each bottle a slight turn and gradually increasing the tilt. Over the course of several weeks, the sediment slides down into the neck of the bottle, collecting against the cap. Today, many producers use machines that can do this more quickly, but some still do it by hand. Skilled workers can turn tens of thousands of bottles per day. Once all the sediment has collected in the neck, the bottles are kept upside down until it's time for the next step. The neck of each bottle is dipped into a freezing brine solution. This freezes the small amount of wine in the neck into a solid plug of ice, trapping the sediment inside it. Then, the bottle is turned upright and the cap is removed. The pressure inside the bottle shoots out that frozen plug like a little icy bullet. The sediment is gone. The champagne is crystal clear. But now there's a bit of wine missing from the bottle, and the pressure has dropped slightly, so a small amount of wine is added back. This is often mixed with a tiny bit of sugar, which determines how sweet the final champagne will be. For very dry champagne, almost no sugar is added. For slightly sweeter styles, more is added. But even dry champagne usually has a little bit of sugar to balance its intense acidity. Finally, a cork is inserted. Real champagne corks are about twice as tall as the bottle opening. They're compressed and pushed in, then held in place with a wire cage. The cork wants to expand back to its original size, but it can't, so it creates a perfect seal. Over time, the cork does expand slightly inside the bottle, which is why old champagne corks have that distinctive mushroom shape when you remove them. And that's it. The champagne is complete. It's labeled and shipped out into the world, ready to mark celebrations, toast achievements, and create memories. Champagne has become synonymous with celebration, luxury, and special moments. Part of this is the wine itself, its elegance and complexity. Part of it is centuries of careful marketing and association with royalty and high society. And part of it is simply the experience. The sound of the cork popping, the cascade of tiny bubbles rising in the glass, the way the wine seems to dance. But behind every bottle is this long, patient process. The cool hillsides where the grapes grow slowly, the careful harvest, the blending of many wines into one, a second fermentation in the bottle, the long rest in dark cellars, the gradual development of flavor, the removal of sediment, the final touch of sugar. It's a process that can't be rushed. The best champagnes take years to make. They require patience, skill, tradition, and time. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you can think about those bottles resting in cellars beneath the chalk hills of Champagne, quietly aging, slowly developing, patiently becoming something extraordinary. From accidental explosions in monastery cellars to the refined wine we know today, Champagne has quite a story. And every bubble in every glass carries a little bit of that history. Sleep well. And perhaps in your dreams, you too will taste the stars.